Hiya guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another Retro RPG. In the end of another week, the end of another poll, we've got a very clear win for Paranormal Animals of Europe for Shadowrun. Now, as usual, I'll cover that in the desktop in a wee second, and I'll be back at the end of the video with some other channel-related news and some other poll-related news. But before I do that, I'd like to take a moment to talk about my Patreons, who this week I have been advised have kind hearts and wise minds. And I don't know whether it's their kindness or their wisdom that makes them support the channel, but whichever it is, it's very much appreciated. Now, if you'd like to join them and help support the channel, or you'd like to gain access to these videos a week early, or you'd like to gain access to one of the other levels of patronage, such as Librarian, where you get access to all of my writings from DrivethruRPG, or Laird, where you get to become a real honest-to-goodness fake Laird of Scotland, then the Patreon's in the description down below. If you check it out, it'd be very much appreciated. But anyway, let's have a look at Paranormal Animals of Europe. So, this is Paranormal Animals of Europe. It's for Shadowrun. It's by the FASA Corporation. It came out in 1993. Now, it's a sequel of sorts to Paranormal Animals of North America. And when I saw that the author had changed from the wonderful Nigel D. Findlay to Carl Sargent, my instant thought was it was because of the passing at a very young age of Nigel D. Findlay. But that wasn't until 1995. They changed the author of the book merely because Carl Sargent is British, so part of Europe. So would have been aware more of the mythological creatures of that area. And they couldn't have chosen anybody better. Carl Sargent, absolutely amazing writer, unfortunately sadly taken from us in 2017. But did so much great work, from fighting fantasy game books to Dungeons and Dragons stuff to a load of stuff for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay to his work on Shadowrun, where he did a lot of stuff for Europe and especially Britain. So he was their go-to guy for European British content and was absolutely brilliant. Now let's have a look at the back cover. Horrible, strange, beautiful. The glorious creatures of the mythic past and horrors undreamt of dwell in Europe of 2054. Gargoyles and goblins stalk the streets of London. Centaurs and satyrs roam the countryside. A mysterious and menacing menagerie of creatures, both fearsome and friendly, now populate the European landscape. Paranormal Animals of Europe is a field guide to those magically awakened creatures. Detailed descriptions and nearly 100 illustrations help bring each animal to life. Get back to nature and liven up your Shadowrun campaign with Paranormal Animals of Europe. So, as I said, it's a kind of sequel. Now, it's learnt some of the lessons from the original. Paranormal Animals of North America, I felt, dwelt on too many similar areas. There were a large number of large aquatic creatures. And how often are you really going to need them in a campaign? And it didn't really have many guard animals. Because basically Shadowrunners aren't just going to be wandering around the countryside a lot. They're going to be breaking into places. So animals which could be used as magical or awakened guard animals, rather than just your average guard dog or whatever, would be used by corporations and would be encountered by Shadowrunners. So that would have made the book very useful. Now, while this book can be twisted in that direction, it still has a lot of wild animals in it, but as I said, it gets away with the worst excesses. It doesn't have loads and loads of massive sea creatures, for example, although there are some in here. Inside, the artwork is absolutely gorgeous. We've got some colour plates as well as the black and white artwork. It varies in quality. There are some pictures where they've given a colour plate of a creature which looks fantastic, and then the black and white art doesn't look great. But there is so much in here, as they said, over 100 illustrations. So it starts off being written by Charles Spencer, Professor of Parabiology, Oxford University, UK. And it's a guidebook for scientists. But of course, in the way Shadowrun does, we've got the information about it, and then we've got the Shadow Talk, where Shadowrunners who have encountered these creatures, and they add a lot of flavour to it. You know, what it's like to fight one of the creatures, what it's like to really encounter them, how vicious they are, how horrible the deaths can be. So we start off with A's, and we've got the Abrams lobster, a large lobster creature. As I said, I'm not quite sure how useful this would be. A water-dwelling Abrams lobster is Europe's largest crustacean. We go on. We've got the Afank, a large crocodile. We can see that it's much larger than a human. The Aitvaras, a large serpent, extremely large, as we can see from the illustration down here. Its head is larger than a human head, so the body is massively long. A three-eyed serpent. The Bayard, an awakened horse of some kind, absolutely massive. Its shoulder height is over the head, so Clydesdale horse-sized, very, very large. The Banshee, a moss spirit creature, although it does have a Latin name, Spectris Lamenteris. It's the form of an old sort of hag, but it does seem to be more of a spirit. The Blackberry Cat, an ordinary-sized cat, but it has different abilities, including a weakness to catnip, which I thought was quite nice. Brockenbow, another spirit, absolutely massive. Now, I do find it quite odd, the amount of spirits they put into these books. They seem like they should be more in a magical book, rather than paranormal animals. But I suppose in a magical world, creatures of pure magic become natural? I'm not quite sure of their thinking. I can kind of get it, but it's not quite to my taste. A bulldog stoat, a rather small stoat creature. A burrowing beaver. A centaur. Now, instead of being completely humanoid, these do seem to have horse-like heads. We'll see elsewhere there's a colour plate of these, which is a bit nicer than this. But they seem quite interesting. Equus Sagittarius. The Cerberus hound, so a three-headed hound. They're native to Greece, we see. It's very large. Has magical powers of concealment, immunity to fire. Oh, I've skipped over a page. Corpse Cadaver, so zombies, which I think is a very nice addition. They're not quite as cool as you could use in a zombie apocalypse, but they're a nice surprise to throw at players. Crested Barbarian, a sort of large ape. Dacarine, another sort of stoat type creature. The Dog Asp, an ordinary type snake. The Ichuis, not sure I'm pronouncing that right. Again, a sort of spiritual creature. A ghostly horse. The European Gargoyle, not much different to the American Gargoyle. Fenrir wolves, up in the Nordic countries, out in the cold, massive, dangerous wolves. Now, this is where I mean that some of the creatures could be used. You could see corporations having large places, research zones, a corporate compound up in the Nordic countries, or in these in Spain and Greece, where they would use these as guard dogs, releasing them into the grounds, so as Shadowrunners come over the wall, they'll be encountering these creatures, and feeding them on, meat and that, to keep them fairly tame. But they're still wild animals. As I said, next up we've got the Flame Jackal, we've got Fomorians, which are the vampire virus infected trolls, I believe, yes. So we've got vampires and banshees, which were the human and elf versions. We had the Zuniqua, which was the trolls, and now we've got Fomorians, which are another type of troll infected with the same virus. These are only native to Ireland, though. The Foulmart, and then we've got some of the colour pages. So we've got the European Gargoyle. Again, pages here. Centaur. As I said, the colour plate is a lot nicer for the Centaur than the black and white art. Cerberus Hound, which is a bit dark. Corpse Cadaver. Fomorians, which look rather less troll-like and more goblin-like. Hydra Worms, Merlin Hawks. Oracle Owls, and we're back to the rest of the information about the Foulmart. The Geedfly, large insect. Can imagine them being unpleasant, but not much of a match. Goblins, which are dwarves infected with a vampire virus. It mentions in the Shadow Talk that these are quite smart pack hunters. So tribes of goblins living in the forests would be quite interesting. Golden boars, gorgons, grandfather elk, which it doesn't give you a size comparison for. There's no artwork in that box, it's completely blank, which I found a little sad. They look quite massive. Hydra worms, another type of dragon, or dracoform at least. Imperial eagles, look very vicious. Jouchkafers, large bugs. Cluds, kind of stunted winged wolves. Meister singers, as I said, they didn't quite get away from massive sea creatures, but there aren't that many. There's not as many in the other book. Merlin hawks. Again, I could see corporations using these around buildings. You know, having the grounds of their corporate compounds patrolled by these animals. They are wild, but the corporations themselves don't tend to do much in the grounds. They're just a buffer zone to keep Shadowrunners out. So let wild animals into them. Nimue's salamander, tiny little lizards. Nosferatu, a different type of vampires. A more bestial, dangerous type. Oracle owls, so we saw the colour plate before. Pegasus mentions that they can be tamed, but they are intelligent creatures. Periton, a deer, a winged deer. Then some more colour plates. Lots and lots of art in this book. So we've got the Wild Hunt, the Pegasus, the Protean, which looks almost Cthulhu mythos in its makeup. Satyrs, a very nice image. The black and white image isn't quite so nice. Sprites, which I wonder if they're supposed to be the Windlings out of Earthdawn. It mentions that they sort of wear clothes and they're intelligent, but they're very, very rare. There's only been 5 sightings, I think it says. Stone toads, wild minotaurs, which the colour plate doesn't bear much resemblance to the description and the black and white picture, because they are supposed to be more troll-like animals. Whereas that just looks like an animal, and it doesn't bear much resemblance. The weird mantis, which reminds me a lot of the Thri-kreen out of Dungeons and Dragons, but I can't really think of a connection in Earthdawn. Obviously it's just some kind of magical creature. We've got the Proteans. As I said, they're sort of weird blobs. What the rack in hell is this? 200 pounds of dysentery bacteria? I call that truly disgusting. Quicksilver mongoose, another small creature. Satyrs, which is quite small. As I said, the artwork in here isn't as good as the colour plate was. Scintillant albatross. Scorporines. What else we got? Spitting pikes, which are smaller, but another aquatic creature. How many do we need? The sprites, as I said, I did wonder if these were supposed to be windlings, but there's no mention of them. It would be interesting to know whether other Earthdawn creatures were reappearing, but this does seem to be based off something Irish, rather than something from Earthdawn. Stone toads, storm dolphins, stamphalians, tarantellas, vampiric pawns. These are like ghouls in the world of darkness. They're somebody affected by the blood of a vampire to gain some extra powers. Volleying porcupines, the wild minotaur. As I said, that does look more troll-like. The facial features does look like a Homo sapiens, I'm trying to think, Ingentis version of a bull, rather than just an animal. It does seem to have human features. A wraith, Umbra metaculosis. Again, it looks like a spirit. Not sure why it's counted. We've got the weird mantis, absolutely massive mantis men. And then we're on to the appendix. So we're talking about fairy critters, the nature of the awakening. Special cases, non-sentient fairy creatures, disputed fairy creatures. The domovoi. These are Homo sapiens of some kind. Absolutely tiny. The knockers. The Wild Hunt, which again is more like spirits. These are summoned up. But I do like the fact that it's the Wild Hunt, so you can have different creatures from within the hunt with different abilities. We've got metahuman expressions. So we've got the Minotaur, so a troll who can manifest as horns instead of just rough bits of cartilage all over them. The Ogre, a slightly heavier version of the Orc. European variants of the different meta types. We've got a list of all the powers of the Awakened, so the different abilities, whether they can cause accidents, whether they control other types of animals, corrosive secretions, dismissal, darkness, just all the different powers, all republished here for usefulness. They'd already been published in the previous book, and some of them within the main rulebook, but you've got everything here for convenience. If you're reaching for a monster out of this book, you've got it all here. You don't have to go flicking to other books. Worldwide distributions, how these creatures are spread elsewhere, how you can get some of them outside Europe. So it goes through each of them, practically unknown in Europe, talking about the greater unicorns, which are in the original North American book, European critters in America. How to use them, it gives you some advice. And then we've got critter tables. Now this is a list of all the critters which have been published up to that point. So all the ones from the main rulebook, all the ones from the Book of North America, with their stats, their abilities. Just, again, convenience. If you want a monster, you just need this one book. You can get them, although you won't have all the images and things from the other books. It's just a really useful thing for the Games Master to reach for. All the ones published from everywhere right through. Fairy creatures, and right up to the end, with a very peculiar piece of art, but looks ancient. So that's Paranormal Animals of Europe. As I said, I think they learnt a lot from the Paranormal Animals of North America, because there's a lot more creatures in here you can use within your campaigns. Having animals trained up as guard, so you can have the hellhounds, for example. A corporation could use them to guard one of their offices or compounds or whatever. So you can introduce them, rather than the players just having to stumble into them in the wilds. But there's still a lot of stuff in here which you probably would never use, because the players will never encounter it. So that was Paranormal Animals of Europe, and that won the poll this week with some 36% of the vote, way ahead of everything else. Because in second place was Spycraft from Alderac Entertainment Group on 20%. Behind that was Crash Course Manual for Paranoia on 17%. In fourth place was Denizens of Earthdawn Volume 2 on 16%. And way back behind was the Dark Tech Sourcebook for Dark Conspiracy on only 11%. Which is sad, because I'd have loved to have covered all of those. But Paranormal Animals of Europe, fantastic to get that out of the way. Now, as usual, they're all cleared out of the way. And we're going back to a Retro Adventures poll. And I'm going to just ones on my shelf. I'm not going to use any digital ones this time. So, first up, we've got Secrets of the Scizar Run for the Star Wars role-playing game. The old one from West End Games. This came out in 1997. A fantastic adventure, would be a joy to cover, because it kind of covers some of the ground used in Shadows of the Empire, which was their multimedia film which wasn't a film. Be fascinating to have a look at. Next up, we've got K for Dawn for 2300 AD from Games Designers Workshop. I love me some Games Designers Workshop stuff, absolutely fantastic, but I don't have much 2300 AD stuff. It'd be fascinating to have a look at an adventure for it. Then we've got Gentleman's Agreement for Spycraft. Now, Spycraft obviously didn't win the poll this week, but let's see if an adventure can win it, because I've got a few Spycraft things, but not too much. Next up, we've got The Key of Deliriate for Slay Industries. Now, I love Slay Industries. It was written only 25 miles in that direction from where I'm sitting. Be fantastic to cover it. A local game, but it doesn't tend to be doing too well in these polls. But we shall see. And finally, we've got Mercurial for Shadowrun, which in my mind was the very first adventure, but it turns out it was actually the second, I believe. But a very early Shadowrun adventure, be absolutely fantastic. I absolutely love the artwork on this one, but we shall see if it wins. Over on DrivethruRPG, well, I've been converting some of my older Dungeons & Dragons stuff across to Shadowdark. It's an interesting new game, and I thought I would give it some support over there. Obviously, these are shared for lairds and librarians on the shared Google Drive if you want to get access to them that way. But the DrivethruRPG is linked down below, as is the Patreon if you want to get access to them that way. Over on RPG Gamer, I'm still continuing through the Young Jedi Adventures. These are fun little stories for kids, and there's not much in them. They tend to be treading over the same ground, so there's not new settings or characters in them because they're just using the same. But I'm usually finding 1 or 2 things to cover in each episode to add to the site. And it's a very fun thing to look at a series which is Star Wars, which I love, but aimed towards little kids, sort of school age, 5, 6, 7-year-old. It's a fun thing. If you're interested in the Star Wars D6 system from West End Games, then I'll link to that down below as well, but it's rpggamer.org. But as usual, I think I've been waffling on for quite long enough, so thank you very much for watching. As always, most of all, you look after yourselves. And I'll catch you later. Bye now.